Hello. I'd like to talk to you today about evaluation research and its ethics. Evaluation is a particular form of applied research that is designed to assess the effectiveness of an intervention or a service or a policy. And this is the kind of research I do to make my living, or much of it. I find it very interesting. It's a very real-world form of research, and it's usually commissioned by an organisation or a government that wants to assess the effectiveness of whatever it wants to assess. And they often want an independent person to do it. I don't necessarily mean by that an independent researcher as such, but someone who's not involved with that organisation or that government department. Could be an academic, but someone who brings some independence to the role of being an evaluation researcher. One of the key principles of evaluation research is it involves what we call stakeholders, which is a word meaning anyone who has a stake in the service or the policy, or representatives. So not everybody who has a stake in it, because that might involve interviewing everyone in a country, which would clearly be not possible. But representatives of those people. So if I was evaluating a service, I would want to talk to the users of that service. I might want to talk to their families or carers or representatives of those people if they were willing to talk to me. I'd want to talk to staff in the service, volunteers if there were volunteers. If it's in the charity sector, there'd probably be a board of trustees. I'd want to talk to some of them. I'd want to talk to the funders. So it's a way of looking at something very much in the round and involving people from all of those different forms of involvement with the service or the policy, involving them in the evaluation process, getting their help in assessing its effectiveness. And for me, this is a really interesting process because I get to talk to real people about the real stuff that they do, that they care about, that they're involved in. And I find that pretty fascinating. And it's also, for me, very interesting to design evaluation, to think about evaluation, talk about evaluation. But something that frustrates me is that it's quite rare for evaluation researchers or the evaluation literature to discuss ethics. And as you know, if you've watched many of the videos on this channel or seen my work elsewhere, I really care about ethics in research. And it bugs me that evaluation researchers sometimes say ethics isn't even relevant to evaluation research. That doesn't ring true for me at all. For me, ethics is every bit as relevant with evaluation as with other forms of research. And I researched and wrote a chapter about this in my ethics book, and I found there were three really key points around evaluation research and ethics that, again, aren't much discussed, if at all, in the literature. The first thing is that evaluation, as they say, follows the money. If there's no funding, then evaluation won't happen, no matter how much it would be useful or necessary. It's not going to happen if there's no funding. And it interests me that, for example, successive UK governments have championed the cause of what works and have put a lot of money into evaluation to find out what works, but have also, in the last 10 years, presided over a programme of austerity in the UK where many services have been cut, and I have not come across one single instance of evaluating the impact of the closure of a service. And this, I think, is a bit of a fault line, an unethical fault line, because of where the funding goes. I would like to see some funders funding evaluation of the impact of service closure. It might have to be independent funders, but I hope one day that will happen. Also, the methods of evaluation research. Methods are always connected with ethics. It's really quite hard, I think, to separate the two. And I do think stakeholder involvement is a good principle, but it creates new ethical difficulties. What if a stakeholder doesn't want to be involved? We can't force them, we can't coerce them, but then that body of people may not be represented. What about if stakeholders want to be paid for their contribution to this work? What about if stakeholders have a very different view of ethics from evaluation researchers? How do we square that circle? There are ways to resolve these issues. If people don't want to be involved, they don't have to. If people want to be paid and there's a budget for the evaluation, some of that budget can be used to pay people for their involvement, for their time and their expertise and their skills. And if stakeholders and evaluators have different views of ethics, then they need to take the time to have those discussions to look at where they can agree and come together on an ethical basis for the evaluation, if nothing else. So ethics and methods, as always, have a relationship and need to be in dialogue. And the third kind of key fault line when it comes to ethics and evaluation research is around publication, and particularly publication bias. Because people are very keen to publish evaluations if they assess the service or the intervention or the policy is very effective and worthwhile and positive. Everybody wants to publish those findings. People rarely are willing to publish findings that are less favourable because they worry about the reputation of their organisation, they worry about securing further funding in the future, they worry about being able to employ people. All sorts of things can come from the publication of unwelcome results. And this can sometimes, I suspect, I don't know, but it concerns me that this may create bias in evaluation research as such, where people become reluctant to even put forward constructive findings. I know that there was one case early in my career where I evaluated a project and came up with 10 findings about specific aspects of that project. Nine were entirely positive and essentially said, carry on doing this or do this more. And one was constructively critical, saying this part is not working so well and here's how you could improve it. And we had 3 separate meetings where they tried to get me to remove that 10th finding and the recommendation associated with it, which I wouldn't do because the data supported it. I wasn't sure they were going to pay me, and that was worrying at the time. Fortunately they did, but they did refuse to publish the evaluation, which was a real shame because it was a pilot project. The evaluation report might have helped other people in different areas wanting to set up similar projects, and it was overwhelmingly positive. So you can see how publication bias, that's just one example from my career, and there's much more widespread. It's known to be a real difficult issue with evaluation research. And I hope one day that will change and that people will become more willing to publish results that aren't necessarily entirely positive. So those are the 3 key ethical fault lines of evaluation research: the money, the methods and the publication, which doesn't mean to say that all the methods and publication and funding is unethical, but just that these are areas where there are ethical difficulties. On the plus side, evaluation can be hugely ethical because it can help organisations to improve their services. And this is why the vast majority of organisations do evaluation research, because they want to improve and they want to know how to improve. They want evidence to show them how and where to improve the services that they offer or the interventions or the policies that they have created. When I wrote my research ethics book, I wrote a chapter on the ethics of evaluation research. If you're interested, you can find out more about it there. But in the meantime, thank you for listening.